Now, this is really important. The way that you make a twist or a betrayal or any kind of big reveal like that, the way that you make it land, be like impactful, emotionally, like where it hits the audience, the way to do that is that you have to pepper in clues all the way leading up to it. And they should be clues that can give the audience a whiff of the direction that the reveal is going to be in, so that when they reread it or they rewatch the movie or whatever, they're like, "Oop!" They see it the second time and they jump up and they say, "That's a clue. That's a little hint." At the same time, you have to withhold a very specific keystone of critical information, because then that is what locks the door and prevents them from getting the reveal early. And you'll see this in a lot of mysteries and dramas and things like that, where they'll give little hints all the way up, and so someone who's being perceptive will pick up on that and be like, "I'm sensing a theme," but then there is a keystone of information that is not revealed. You absolutely don't talk about it, and it is revealed right as like the inciting, the ignition moment in the scene where the reveal actually happens. So I wrote a story pretty recently that is actually a good example of how to write both twists and betrayals. So the story is called Two Men Wait for Sunrise, and I'll summarize. Spoiler alert, it's a short story, it doesn't matter. Maybe better for me to just summarize it here. But the premise is that everyone knows on the whole planet that the world is going to end tomorrow. And so, society is already broken down, and everyone's waiting for sunrise. They're waiting for the world to end and for everyone to die at the same time. And it's not really made clear, that's just the premise. That's just the setup. And, we could go into it in another story or in a continuation, but all we know is that the world is ending and things have sorted out. It starts with our two characters, and it quickly establishes them as best friends. And you can, my earlier video talks about how to write friendships that feel real. You can check that out. But so they're two friends, they're deciding to die together, and that's right there. You build that, they're deciding to die together and with nobody else. And so that's very strongly implies what great friends they are. And we established that the world is ending because they stole like a 300 bottle of tequila or something from the local liquor store, because everything's been ransacked, and they're just drinking and talking about old times and waiting for death together. And now there's going to be a couple betrayals and a couple little twists here coming up. So just to walk you through it, the friends are on the same page. We set up some of the expectations of the betrayal. Because there's one more stoic friend. It's actually better without names, because now we're talking about like the building blocks of how I told this story. So there's a stoic character and there's a more needy character. Kind of like more sniveling, but it's established they're very good friends. And just like I say in my character building video, they talk about old times, and they clearly have chemistry and backstory between them. But so the sniveling guy makes it very clear early on that he's afraid to die alone. And so he's almost glad that the world is ending with everyone dying simultaneously, because then it's like he's going to go into the dark with a lot of people, and he feels better about that. And you don't have to relate to that. That's just set up for one of these betrayals. So, but so he's kind of sniveling. He's kind of neurotic like that. And he is so grateful to the stoic friend because he has someone to go out with. But then they start arguing, and this also builds kind of like the, how much history they have, because the sniveling friend says, "I have to tell you a secret. I feel so guilty. I have to tell you this secret before we die." And the stoic friend says, "You shouldn't do that. That's going to cause problems." That's also a little foreshadowing and insight. But he says, "You should not do that. That's going to cause problems. Let's just go out." But the sniveling, the moodier friend insists. He says, I have to go out with a clean conscience. Let me tell you. And he reveals. So this is betrayal 1. And twist 1. So these guys are old friends. They've decided to die together. Sniveling, kind of cowardly friend admits that he... Okay, so, sorry, I was trying to remember the exact mechanism of it. But they had numbers that they would play together. So the stoic friend would give the cowardly friend money, and they would play those numbers. And like 10 years ago, it won kind of big. It won like a life-changing amount of money. And the cowardly friend lied and said that he forgot to buy the tickets, and I'm so sorry I forgot to buy the tickets, but then kept both shares in the money. And he admits that, so that's a big betrayal. That's betrayal 1. And at this point, just to keep the twist flavor powerful, the stoic friend then reveals that his mother needed that money for can't like some terminal illness treatment. I don't think we even specify, but which I suppose the sniveling friend was probably aware of. But we reveal that also to the audience. We reiterate that, and that builds both the story of their shared friendship, and it also deepens this betrayal. And so the stoic friend is now thinking, I could have had more time with my mother. And remember, the sniveling friend, he just doesn't want to die alone, and he wants to die honest. So the second twist in betrayal is that the stoic friend deprives him of that and strangles him out. And the cowardly friend's last words are, I don't want to die alone. And the stoic friend says, I know. And then it becomes one man waiting for sunrise. So that's just a little walkthrough. Sorry, if you didn't want to hear that whole story, then I apologize for the time it took. But it's a really good example. It really is just, I would say, a project where I was like, I'm just going to build emotional pathos into this story, and I'm going to weave it back and forth hard such that that it's very emotional and kind of powerful. And you can agree or disagree with that, obviously. But now, so let's go over what we did in that example. So you create expectations, you create a groundwork which is angled in the opposite direction of what's really going to happen. That's the thing. You set your audience up and you say, hey guys, we're looking this way. Two old friends, and they're, this is a sad time, but they're in it together. And then you start walking it back the other way, quickly, suddenly, before most audience members can pick up on it. And again, you can put little hints, like, it's a great, like, I mentioned about, like, peppering in little hints. The cowardly character says, I'm so glad I'm not going to die alone. We're setting up that twist. We're setting up that betrayal. And likewise, when the stoic character says, hey, let's not overshare right now, that could really cause things to spin out of control. We're giving the audience little tastes, and we're kind of telegraphing in a controlled way what's about to happen. We're calling the shot and saying, hey, look this way, look at two good friends. Except, oops, we're going the other way. And, this is actually a thing in music theory as well. I won't go too deeply into that. But when you've established a modality and basically when you've established the direction of a song, the song is climbing slowly up a scale or something like that, and then you suddenly jump in the other direction, when you do it right and at the right time, it can be so satisfying and sound so good. And in some of your favorite pop songs, that's what the hook is. The hook is like, we're walking you in one direction and then a clean, surprising turn. I think one of my music textbooks described it as violating expectations, and that's what I would describe. I remember that phrase because it absolutely serves for writing as well. You want to not too much. You don't want to throw so much random or offensive or anything. You don't want to throw so much at the audience that they're like, I don't even understand what's happening. But if you can do it within the framework that you're building, take them on a fun little roller coaster ride, like little twists and turns that that aren't painful and jarring to them. That's what's going to make for a satisfying, memorable experience. And now I want to circle back for a quick minute and talk about the keystone information thing. So I'm going to use another quick short story. This is actually one of the ones that made me a creative writer, where it got big attention on the internet back in the early days of the internet, and it's called The Tundra. You can Google it and read it yourself. I'm not putting it in the public domain, but it's basically posted everywhere for free, so enjoy. But the twist of that's really satisfying. Is so the premise is that there is a magical area that will show something. There's some kind of mysticism, and so that's the keystone piece of information right there. Is like, we know that it's magic. We know it shows something specific. And so this main character goes out to investigate it, and he's already seen people come back. Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're sad, but they're at peace. Sometimes they're like, people are coming back with all these different emotions, and they're going out there for all these different reasons. So again, we're giving kind of breadcrumbs about what's probably going to happen, but there is a keystone of information that's missing. And so we hold that over the audience, and the main character goes out, and all he sees is this very broken, physically and emotionally, seems very troubled man. And he's like, that was creepy, but, what's that about? And then he goes back, and that's when we provide the keystone information. And I think in the tundra, I think that it is actually the last line, and someone clues this guy in and says, the only thing you see out there is your own future. There you go. That's the twist. So this guy realizes suddenly and right in the outro that he's in for a very bad time coming up soon. and you can read it yourself if you want to like experience that. But is simple as you have to lay groundwork, withhold the reveal specifically, keep the reveal off to the side, and then just pop that reveal in. It's like putting the key in the ignition. Suddenly the whole engine springs to life, and your audience will appreciate that. They'll feel that wow moment. Just to quickly summarize, and we'll talk about these stories more. If you have any questions, please leave in the comments if you want to know more about a specific thing that I mentioned. But a few more things I had in my notes were in the American Demon Waltz, in that series, Bobby is our main character, and she develops a fairly close friendship with a guy named Mercer, who respects her a lot, to the point that he kind of like, it gets into some science fiction stuff, but the point is that eventually in a spin-off sci-fi that I wrote, we follow Mercer, and he is working with a simulation of Bobby, and the dynamic becomes completely inverted. And you've probably seen that in a lot of cool movies and things where, like, summarized easily as friends become enemies, enemies become friends, but where a relationship is kind of turned on its head, and whatever was true before, if one character is dominant, if one character is confident, if one character is kind, then now they're going to be backbiting, defensive, mean-spirited, and one character should ideally, they can change as well, but should at least be the, the anchor for this relationship. And so you see one character kind of like pivot around another character, and you explore that, and it can be very interesting. Another thing is, I mentioned like violation of expectations for the audience, but you can also do that for a character, and then, the audience can feel that. So 2 quick examples, actually in reverse orders. I wrote a story called Chiron's Spare, and it's about a guy who is trying to burn his whole life down. He's really trying to like exit out, and it seems like it's working. It seems like he is making his life worse and like on his way off stage. But the violation of expectation is he kind of gets not what he wanted. That's the thing. Like, he was driving towards a goal, but he got the opposite of that, and was surprised to find that that's exactly what he needed. And just like we talked about, you lay the groundwork for that, you plant the seeds, and then you introduce a keystone. And likewise, the opposite, this is another one of my more famous ones, and you can also read it for free online. It's called Renault Herbert Hansen. And it's about a big capitalist who has enough money that he manages to live forever and run his company forever, which you would think for a capitalist would be the dream come true. Every capitalist dreams of immortality and being a corporate giant forever, permanent control of the world. So he gets that, and I'll just say, suffice it to say, that's not really a twist so much, but it is a kind of slow burn betrayal of his expectations in that he hates it. Knowing how to write twists and betrayals can be a really powerful tool in your writing arsenal. And it's actually pretty easy. It has a big ratio of like high wow factor to relatively little setup. So if you made it this far in the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and leave me a comment if you have any questions. I answer all my comments. It's a really good way to get in touch with me, and it all really helps the video. It helps me make more of these. It helps this channel grow. And helps me devote more time to improving the production quality of these videos. So I really appreciate it. Any interaction that you can give me on this video is very greatly appreciated. Thank you guys. Thanks everybody for joining with me. I love talking about this stuff, and so there's plenty more to come. All right, I'll catch you soon. I'd also like to really thank my patrons on Patreon. Patreon makes creative work feasible and possible for a lot of artists. My own link is right in the description of this video. My creative levels would really be not where they are without my patrons. So thank you guys so much. Thanks to each of you for everything.